Greetings, Kerbonauts. This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and this is episode number 33 of the Gateway Project, in which we are supposed to be launching the AMS and the ELC-3. You already know what the ELC is. It's the Express Logistics Carrier. Now, this is number 3, even though last time we launched number 4. 1 and 2 came in the right order, 4 was sort of out of order, don't ask me why, I don't know, and ELC-3 went up last. The AMS, that stands for Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. It's Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer number 2, actually. The first one went up on a space shuttle and just stayed in the cargo bay, and then they brought it back down, and then they sent up the new version. The first one was the prototype. This is the real deal, and it stays attached to the station. Now, if Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer doesn't sound like science, then I don't know what does. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Right now, though, I'm launching my Hydra version 2. This new Hydra crew carrier is on its way up to the KSS to bring up a new escape vehicle, because if you remember Voss Kerman last time, he took away that Soyuz, and now there isn't enough escape pod space in case anything were to go wrong on the space station. So we need to bring up just one Kerbal to replace the fact that Voss came down all by himself, and then we'll have enough room in case everybody wanted to come home all at once. There will be 6 spaces. And I have just released stage 1 of my new Hydra carrier, and that lets you see that new cryogenic propulsion stage there. That second stage at the bottom, it has a Talisar spherical fuel tank that I've crammed under there, but the top of it is fairly similar. One of the differences in this one, though, is that I'm now using the HotRockets mod. That means that all of the engine exhaust and flames and everything you've seen so far during this liftoff has been coming from that, and so far I'd have to say I think it's pretty cool. I do like it a little bit better than the normal ones. That cryogenic stage that I'm getting rid of right there, that second stage, it's another welded part, of course. And now we're igniting up the new engine in the bottom compartment of my Hydra. Most of the top of the Hydra is pretty much the same as it was before, but you can see that engine is new. Now, the next thing I'd like to show is, see where I'm sort of rotating around here, moving the mouse? That little spot is not a star, it's a shiny, reflective space station known as the KSS. Watch as we start speeding up here. You see I'm trying to point to it to give you an idea where it is. That is reflective because I'm using another new mod called Distant Objects. It's version 1.3. The way that this one works is it starts making things rendered even when they're normally too far away, because that's sort of what it's like in space. The sun just reflects off of those things. Another thing it can do actually is it can change your sky. I'm looking at all the stars out there, and supposedly if you're in space, I've never been in space, so I don't know, it makes it where it's a lot harder to see if the sun is shining. It's something, I don't know. The way that the Distant Objects things works is it kind of dims down your sky and makes it more black. Well, I've intentionally left it not black because I want to be able to still see my sky, but I have allowed it to do the thing that it does in order to make objects render at a much greater distance than normal. Next up on the agenda, we have Jebediah over at Minmus, and they're pretty much done with whatever it is that they were going to do there. There hasn't been any real meaningful science done there for a while. They need to bring that data home. They're going to send up a station keeping, like a janitor, sort of an astronaut. This Kerbal, he's going over there in order to just keep an eye on things at Minmus. And once he gets there, Jebediah will be able to come home along with his 2 buddies. So to do that, we're going to launch another Hydra. This is a special Hydra-C2B. So the A is used just for low Kerbin orbit and to reach the space station, and this B is going to be used for things like going to the moon or Minmus, where we need a little bit of extra power in order to get there. Because if you remember, way back when Jebediah first went to the space station at Minmus, it turned out that they were running low on fuel, and he needed to jettison a whole bunch of cargo from inside his Hydra cabin there, in the back, the trunk area, and that got Bill pissed off, and it just led to a whole bunch of trouble. So we're going to make sure that we send plenty of Delta V in these rockets in order to get them where they need to be. And that is going to mean this bigger one, like I said. So here we are extending out the solar panels on the new Hydra-B with that pretty big extra stage there that's going to send us on our way and make sure that we have plenty. And after all this, we are going to go to the KSS finally, and at the KSS we have a few things to bring up. We need to bring a progress craft that we're going to dock to the Pierce module, as well as bring up the actual new permanent stuff, the AMS and the ELC-3, the Express Logistics Carrier, and the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. It's going to be a long trip for our little friend right here, so while we're letting him head off to Minmus, how about if we do a few things like go down to the VAB for a moment. The normal low-carbon orbit Hydra has a KW rocketry set of propulsion down here. We've got our big engine and some SRBs with some side thrusters to make sure that everything gets clear whenever we decouple it. And working our way up, we have my new cryogenic interstage. So look at that gorgeous piece right there. That is one welded part. Other than the engine is a KW engine that I've scaled up just a little bit to specifically serve this purpose. So in my propulsion section over here, you can see I still have the KW Rocketry Wildcat 5, but now I also have an orbital engine as well as a second stage engine. The orbital engine is the one that I'm using up in here. So if we take away these side panels, we can start to see what this looks like when it's out there just doing its initial orbital maneuvers or its first push into space. I have set up a special node that I can attach to, but it's a little tricky to get it to hook into the right one sometimes. There it is. And when I do it that way, you can see that the top of it disappears just a little bit, but the bottom still sticks through and makes it look pretty cool. It has a hatch up here that lets us go in and look at that and service the interior if we need to. It's got some lights and some antenna and a little remote control unit, and the engine comes down and just barely touches right there at the bottom, so it's not too big and not too small. We have some hidden away RCS thrusters in here for when it wants to deorbit. It can turn those on and flip itself around easily and then deorbit. You can see my propulsion stage here. There it is. That's the cryogenic second stage. All one welded piece. That extra stuff in there, I have to attach that. All that, the antennas and the remote control unit, those are separate modules. But the rest of it here, this is all one. You can see that I have set it up with the appropriate amount of fuel, 441 and 539. Because that's how much fuel would actually fit in the cubic volume that I have presented for myself here. So this little piece and this piece together come out to that if you compare it to stock. Also for the deorbiting, I threw in just a tiny bit of monopropellant so that those RCS engines can work. And it is also a decoupler with 150 decouple force attached to this top part right there so that it can decouple itself here when we get into orbit. Working our way up into here, you can see I have replaced the old circular solar panels with some AIES ones that make it look a bit more like an Orion. And I have the new AIES antenna right there, as well as the older one there in the remote tech, and that's just a sensor that I threw on there because it looked cool. Underneath, we have 6 compartments to carry cargo, and that could be clothing or snacks or extra SRBs down in there. It sits on the decoupler from SDHI and the propulsion stage, which I had to make my extra orbital engine. When we looked over here and you saw that KLS orbital engine, the reason I have that one is because I needed to create one that had an extra node for attachments right in here. Otherwise, let's take a look and see what would happen. So this right here is the normal SDHI service module fairing. If we take that off and we put this we don't put the fairing on first. Normally the SDHI mod is supposed to work with this LV909 that's fairingless, and you put that on there, and then you put that on, and then you can put on the side fairings. But if you instead want to put on a different engine, like say a normal KW rocketry engine, like so, and then you try to put on this, look where it sits. First of all, it sits way down there and puts on another fairing and doesn't look even close to what it's supposed to. And if you lift it up here, it doesn't have any way to attach. So what I've done is created this extra engine that has an attachment point. You can't actually see the green dot because it's inside the engine, but there's a green dot right inside there, and that allows this to connect up to that green dot that's in there, allowing it to stick through on the bottom. Also, because I didn't attach this to the bottom here, it's fairingless. Although even if I had attached it there, I took the fairing out of the modules. So I just attached that, and now I have a cooler looking engine than the LV909 that I can stick in there to have going out the bottom of my craft. The rest of it is basically what you would expect to see. If you take this away, we have our normal heat shield. There are some RCS jets on the side for a little bit of maneuverability. Even if the capsule has been decoupled, those will, in combination of the monopropellant that's already inside one of these capsules, it will allow it to maneuver just a tiny bit. And then we have the SDHI chutes and some lights on the outside to make it look really cool. The 2B is just the same thing, but on a larger rocket. So all of this up here is going to be what you just got through seeing, and the bottom is just a larger rocket. It also has some side thrusters so that when this section here decouples and those fire sending it in this direction, these fire sending it in this direction, which kind of gives it a spin and makes sure that it gets completely clear of anything. We have on the bottom here a normal KW rocketry engine and fuel tank and another fuel tank. And that brings us up to the cryogenic section that I had just welded together. And the rest of it is going to look exactly the same as the other Hydra. Up at the KSS, it has occurred to me that I need to bring up a progress craft that is supposed to dock specifically to the Piers module, because that module is going to eventually get decoupled, and when the progress leaves, it's going to take that Piers with it, and they're both going to go in deorbit, because I'm going to go into the future of the KSS. Hold on, this next ignition's really loud. Okay, so to continue what I was saying, I'm going to go into when the next module, the research module for the Russians, has come up, and it will dock to that location. So that Piers isn't supposed to be there, even though I believe it's still there on the real ISS. Ours is going to be gone, and the new MLM is going to be docked there instead. That research module has been on and off delayed since 2007 in our dimension, so they've been really waiting a very long time in order to get themselves this extra module that's going to be able to do some more science up there. It's kind of interesting how long they're actually going with it before they get it docked, and yet still going through with it in the first place. I guess maybe they've just gone too far, or they'll be able to get at least some usefulness out of it before the ISS itself is completely decommissioned. Anyway, how cool is that booster separation right there anyway, huh? Man, that stuff looks good when they're flying off like that, and that was like nicknamed the Russian Star, where they make a X kind of symbol when they fly away like that. So we've run out of fuel in that first stage, and we'll decouple that. Every time I see this one, I've seen it a few times now, but every time I see it, it's still wonderful. I love watching this stage. This is actually one of my favorite rockets now, I gotta say. So there it is. The Progress is now out there in space. It's still running on the second stage, and after that, we have the frigate stage, or a little frigate tug, and that'll help put it into place as well. So we're just going to get ourselves up there into that orbit of the KSS using my new patented, well-used how to go from the surface directly up to a space station techniques. And then we are going to dock it to the Piers module, just like I said earlier, so that later we can take that away and decouple, or not decouple, so we can deorbit both of them at the same time. And there it is! The KSS is now behind us. So the Russian name for the module that's going to come up and dock here later, it's the Nauka, and it's based on a functional cargo block, so it's going to pretty much look just like a Zarya. And there we go with that second stage. So now the frigate can get us over a little bit closer. Turns out Bob is pissed off again because he's looking at all the fuel that was on the second stage and all the fuel that's going to be on the frigate when we decouple it. And he's telling everybody down at KSC how they're wasting all of these resources, and who knows when someday we might actually need these resources. So there it goes, and it's going to use its overabundance of fuel to simply deorbit at this point. Definitely not what Bob was hoping to see. So now the Progress just needs to glide its way over there. Since I didn't want to just send it up for no reason whatsoever, it's also bringing some life support. So once that docks up, I'll use that TAC fuel balancer and we'll transfer over some life support into the station and maybe take some of the waste off of the station and down into the Progress, so that later we can spread the ashes of all those snack wrappers as they burn up across the sky. Coming up after this one now, we're just about ready. We're going to be launching the AMS and the ELC. So we have a big, huge rocket sitting down on the pad, and it is hooked up to a ton of decouplers. Why? Because it needs a lot of power. I decided that I wanted to have that AMS taking up 25 energy per second. That's also why you're seeing a lack of any real meaningful gravity turn right here, because I need to get into orbit as fast as I can so that I can open up my fairing and expose some extra solar panels that I have on my Minotaur tug in order to keep the power flowing into the AMS as it's being launched. I need to keep either the engine going at all times or these extra solar panels pointed toward the sun. 25 energy per second is a lot. So that's what I put into that, because it's supposed to be this super power intensive, just draining, state-of-the-art particle physics detector that was constructed and tested and operated by an international team of 56 different institutes from 16 different countries, all organized under the United States Department of Energy sponsorship. Having it take up so much power has definitely made this particular launch particularly challenging. I had to go straight up in order to get into space as quick as possible, and then I had to do a strange orbital maneuver in order to try and start circularizing myself a little bit early. Also, whenever not actually doing anything with it, I would point it toward the sun to make sure that it was still bringing in the most power possible while it was idle. At the time that I'm recording this narration, it has measured 46,134,000,000 different cosmic rays. It has been attached to the real ISS for 1,031, 1,031, almost 1,032 days. By my calculations, that means it's detecting over 500 cosmic rays per second. It was originally launched in our dimension in May of 2011 on the Space Shuttle Endeavour STS-134. That was the 25th and the final flight of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. It actually wasn't even supposed to launch at all, but controversy over the cancellation of this flight and how it would mean that there would be no AMS brought up to the station, and various other components that would have been on future shuttles and how they wouldn't have been able to be brought up if they canceled all of those flights. That controversy caused Congress to order some additional flights in order to make sure that this stuff got up there. Mine has reached my KSS, so we're going to hook it up to the robotic arm here with the electromagnet, and then we can go out and hook it to the station. Here it is in the VAB, and you can see I have a whole bunch of launch clamps down on the bottom. Like I said when I was launching it, I needed that extra power that they bring in. I think they bring in 1 E per second or something, and my AMS uses 25 E per second. And so when I put it out on the launch pad, I saw that it was draining really, really fast. So I aborted that launch, went back in, and added a bunch of extra clamps. So we have a normal little rocket just working our way up here, really nothing special. This is stuff you've seen many times before, as well as the Minotaur tug, except for the fact that I have extra solar panels on there. The solar panels were the second change I made when I canceled and came back in. I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to need extra launch clamps on there, there's no way the solar panels are going to be good enough just with the 3 that I usually put on. So I'll put on these extra new ones here from the AIES mod, and that will give me the amount of power I need in order to get it up there. So we have up here, this is that's a strut I thought I was going to use for putting struts to go in between the fairing and the top, and I would hook them up to this, but it turned out that I completely forgot to put them on before I launched, and I guess I didn't need them because it launched fine. It was balanced. I did turn on my center here to make sure that it looked like it was in the center of the rocket when I was building it in the first place, so I guess I did a good enough job, and it wasn't wiggly or anything like that. And there's the AMS. It's one welded part that, like I said, once I had that put together, I went into the part file and I modified it to take 25 E per second. And then this is the ELC-3 that you're going to see me hooking up to the station there pretty soon. It has different orbital replacement units, including what is supposed to be a replacement robotic arm with a bunch of controls and stuff that show up on it. And I just put scientific instruments on a couple plates to make it look like that. Some ammonia tanks that are supposed to be replacements and other things like that. So let's go and finish watching this get docked up. Bob is ready to go on his EVA. Go up there and grab that. That needs to be docked to the last remaining attachment point where this sort of thing can go on the starboard side. We also have one more attachment point that is allowed on the port side. So there were 4 of them on the left. That's our starboard as we're looking here. And on our right, the port side had 2. So with this one and the ELC, that's actually going to finish off these instruments. So I put that on there at a slight angle on purpose. That's how the real one is. And then I notice Bob's electric charge has been depleted. So apparently while carrying that on your back, you actually have to pay its resource cost. So with that 25 per second, it drained away all of my power, my personal power, in about 4 seconds.
So let's go with our we knew 58 laws, right? We remember that we last smashed over all the top. Fail the way out for any allow say, what number is in the space? What's this game to say? We're skating all the rams at it. There's no large math 11. No, we must need it exciting. Hey, yeah. Hey, molest. Net eater is well. Yours is the mirror. No. Listening it ain't we one did you. Sister Losria, Nate Manish Carson, the Nell says, getting you live next. Sat me after we was there. No way, this dirty was. And yes, it's been we missed, and there was just we. Say, I've been at the we molest. We put that on and yeah. News was decision. That's sketched out, but they get our snip. Was defeat the law. I got the Irish city with never. Fish in there, lose your it's me, no wonder, right? Leave the gas nice and you know. Well, but snitch out of my sponsor. As the elevated city there walks in your smashed city. This I look you little boy, federal keep have I guess you.
And so the only 2 survivors of a future Kerbin, Krantz and Jebediah, traveled back to their own time before the temporal field collapsed, having placed all the hopes of their tiny planet in the hands of Joseph, who must now stop the KSS from destroying everything.
Oh my, that's some interesting news. And also, I don't know how to break it to you, Kerbonauts, but we're about to dock up the ELC-3 on that port truss, which is going to complete the truss. It's going to complete the station. Indeed, the station will be brought up to modern day specifications by putting this on that truss, and we're almost there. Now, I am going to go into the future of the ISS and maybe do some things that were talked about or are actually planned. But other than those, if we wanted a modern day ISS, this is going to be it. And there it is. How awesome is that? Bob just wants to take a look around from his helmet cam and just review some of the footage from his EVA. Once he gets back inside, he'll be looking at this film himself, and this is what he gets to see. Oh, beautiful. He's even gonna go fly out farther from the station and just get a good look from the distance and then come back in again. In fact, I think he wants to make another time-lapse view that he can then speed up and show of the entire completed station, because this is an awesome day for him. He goes and checks out a whole bunch of other things, and then he heads back in. But like I said, it's not over for us. We still have to deal with the guy that's on his way to Minmus that's gonna let Jeb come home. We also have to launch the Nauka, a research module, and we have further news about the story with Joseph and Krantz and all of those, and what's going to happen now that we know the truth about what's been going on. Now more than ever, it might be important to go and take a look at the moon and see what's going on with the anomalies that are over there. So maybe we'll do that next time. Until then, I will see you later, Kerbonauts.